Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's Secrets of Flow. I'm Alexei Zheglov, speaking from my place in Toronto, Canada. Today is November 26th, Tuesday, 12 o'clock noon in the US-Canada Eastern Time Zone. That's the weekly time and place. This is your time and place for practical advice and insights about improving the world of work. When I say the world of work, I usually mean intellectual, intangible, 21st century kind of work. And the work is invisible and it's very hard to see and see how it's progressing. In my introduction the last week, I mentioned 4 types of people who might be listening or watching this. And today, one particular person will be really important, and that's the type of a business owner, someone who runs a business, who has customers to please and win their business, and the customers are quite picky and the markets are volatile, and yet the work that is being delivered to those customers is still invisible, and it's very hard to see how it's progressing and quite difficult to manage. So, and this is where fit-for-purpose framework presented in this book by David J. Anderson and I can help quite a lot. And so we'll talk about this during this hour. If you are, however, a somewhat different person, such as, let's say, a manager working for this business leader, you might still find this useful because we'll also be talking about some of the operational kind of things that you need to make sure run smoothly in order to match your founder's, your business leader's vision. And if you are a consultant or a coach advising such business leaders and managers and looking for some fresh ideas, I'll be here for you during this hour as well. And if you're just working for yourself and primarily concerned about your own individual effort and just getting into that state of flow, this hour is yours as well. When I say hour, actually, it's going to be less than an hour. So I gave myself a hard rule that this episode must end in no more than 55 minutes, respecting whatever may be on your schedule for today in the next hour. So let's begin. It was about 7 years ago today that actually we launched the Fit for Purpose book. So David Janison and I were in Paris on November 29th, 2017. This is what the first edition of the book looked like. And we launched the book, and I just want to take a very brief pause and make sure that I can show you the pictures from that day. Unfortunately, it was just at the very last second that I was hoping to use Miro for this purpose, but it just quit on me like literally 5 minutes before I had to go live. Thank you very much, Miro, again for some late-breaking change. I seem to own this board and the application, and I cannot possibly go into presenter mode for some reason. So we're gonna have a not so good-looking picture as a result. But anyway, that was me on stage at Kanban France 2017 conference. You can see boxes containing copies of the book there. David and I spoke for about 15 minutes each. David read his favorite excerpt from the book. uh, that was kind of something book authors like to do quite often. I chose for kind of a contrasting approach. I prepared a very short talk for about 15 to 20 minutes. So I had about 1 minute on average for each of the book's chapters. And a couple of days prior to that, I was in Munich, and I gave about a 60-minute talk. There was a local meetup of interested people. My German friend and colleague Wolfgang Wiedenroth organized it for me, and so invited me to speak. And so I kind of prepared two talks at the same time, one for 20 minutes and another for 60 minutes. And kind of going to different degrees of depth, and that was that kind of sort of was a preview of what's to follow, because in the years to come I would end up speaking about fit for purpose and teaching it in all sorts of formats, ranging from those 20 minutes to a full-length 2-day training class and everything in between, like 1 day, half-day workshop, conference slots from 1 to 2 hours, webinars, and so on. And so I would be no stranger to the task of creating a 50-minute webinar about Fit for Purpose framework today, but I don't want this to be a webinar. I want this to be kind of an unscripted, intuitive, maybe going behind the scenes and sharing some thoughts, feelings, with the aim, of course, to motivate you to see your customers and your business in a new light, informed by Fit for Purpose, and give you some practical advice as well, based on some of the questions I've been hearing from various people quite often during those years. So, a couple of months ago, David Jamison shared a post on LinkedIn in which he said, well, for some reason people think Fit for Purpose is a book about Agile, or it's about Kanban. And of course it's not. It's a book about business strategy. It's a book about the kind of hand-in-glove match of your products and services and what your customers need, and how customers, maybe sometimes irrational, and make some strange choices in the market, whose products and services to buy. But we as a business can still have some kind of system that helps us understand our customers and anticipate it, and then give them what they need. So that's what the book is about. And kind of to prove the point, I reposted David's post with my own comments, and my comments were kind of about, okay, well, let's just randomly read from this book and and see if the randomly picked text, the sample text, sounds like, let's say, a book about Agile software development or not. Well, clearly, you should segment your market by customer purpose. Well, it didn't sound like it. Okay, I'm not going to reread everything I put in that post. I just say those fragments that I copied from the book, that were picked completely at random. And the last of these 5 was how you view who you are and who you want to be will affect your decision making and your choices of which markets to pursue. So an impact of your identity, maybe of your corporate identity, or maybe that's the identity of the founder or leader of the company, is going to have a pretty big impact on strategy. So we were talking about things like that. So we're not really talking, process improvement or anything like that in the book. And so just for the fun of it, because again, I want to make it kind of a fun session and kind of look at F4P from different angles and not just have yet another webinar on it. Let's repeat this exercise, and so I'm going to actually let's generate some random numbers, and yeah, and I'm just going to read from the book. And see if we can find something useful that way. So, pages from 3 to 327. So let's generate a random number, and it says 125. All right, so let's open the book on page 125 and see what's there. If there is a lesson here, it is that consumers adopt safety and regulatory requirements as fitness criteria when it affects their consumption of the product. When the regulations relate to an aspect of the service that they don't consume or view as an overhead, or non-value added S aspect of the product implementation or service delivery, the regulations won't be a fitness criterion for them. It is the role of lawmakers and regulatory authorities to make these fitness criteria in order to protect others, to protect third parties not directly involved in producing, delivering, or consuming the product or service. So there's something to be said here about regulatory requirements, conformance fitness criteria, and how they matter to consumers of products, to businesses producing those products and services, and potentially government regulators who may be watching out on consumers' behalf. So it's clearly part of the bigger text, as you can see. There's just a small sample of it, which is about business, right? It's about strategy, perhaps for businesses in regulated environments. All right, let's try another random number. Okay, 217. Let's turn the page. 217. We've come to realize over the past 5 years since publishing the first edition that many businesses lack the learning and adaptation mechanisms needed to implement the framework and make real the synthesis of their strategy with evolutionary improvement of their products, services, and processes. Yes, so actually, yes, in some of the first years since F4P Framework came out and the book was published, there were a number of things that various consulting customers and readers gave us as feedback that sometimes, you know, we have a very good tool such as, let's say, fit-for-purpose card, which is kind of our unique way of effectively surveying customers and turning that into actionable feedback. Companies often lack effective feedback loops to actually act on that valuable information that the customers are telling them, let's say, by way of F4P cards. And so we need to teach them and give them some additional guidance on how to create those feedback mechanisms, how to build them into what they do as far as feedback loops in their organizations are running already. And so a bit later today, I will also speak about a number of things resulting from some of the conversations that I had with my readers, students, and clients. Some questions they asked me about various things that they still wanted answers to after reading the book. All right, let's try another number, and then I guess I'll just stop here. But folks, if you needed an indicator whether this book is about agile methodologies for software development, I guess you already have your answer. So the next number is 133. Pierre, this is one of the characters in the book, is leaving for the airport soon for another long-haul flight. He will hit the ground running and meet with a customer when he lands. To be fit for this purpose, the time to compile the report must be short, even if it sacrifices some precision, but is still accurate. So apparently, Pierre, the traveling executive, relies on one of the people who work for him to give him a brief, accurate, maybe not precise to the decimal point, report about something related to his business. Alan's purpose is different. If any financial irregularities were to happen in the company, his professional reputation and his license as a certified public accountant would be on the line. He can wait longer for the work to be completed. Okay, so this is part of the story where the same kind of work of financial reporting is done within the company, but two very different executives consume it, and one of them needs the report very fast, but you can round up the numbers and just have them in the right ballpark, and that enables, let's say, negotiation of the new deal, whereas the other executive can wait longer for the report, but then the report must be accurate to the penny. So the accountant who produces these financial statements basically has to meet two very different sets of criteria at the same time. And this chapter is about, in part, of course, how he delivers these two classes of service within the same service within the company. All right, this may be enough for this kind of fun with the book. Just to give you an idea that this is really a book about business. And now I want to give you somewhat a different feel for it, for the F4P. I want to say, those of you who met me in person in Toronto recently may have heard me use the expression a three-pizza team, as if I was mocking the concept of a two-pizza team, which is one of the sacred cows of a certain popular improvement methodology. Someone coined the term the two-pizza team about 20 years ago with the intent to promote the idea that self-organizing, small, stable, collaborative, cohesive teams could really be high-performing in the modern intellectual enterprise. And the test for how big your team is was like, can you feed it with two pizzas? So the ideal team size being postulated anywhere from like maybe 5 to definitely fewer than 10 people, right? 7 plus minus 2 was one of the rules of thumb. And two pizza was another rule of thumb. If you need more pizzas to feed your team, well, then you should take it as a hint that your team is too large. So what's up with that expression that I threw around about 3 pizza teams? Well, something's changed in 20 years, and that is people's awareness of their dietary needs and choices. And also a heightened expectation of acceptance by the rest of the society and the food vendors of those dietary needs. And so if you order pizza for a team in the office in a similar fashion, now one of those pizza pies must be gluten-free. And another pizza pie must be vegetarian. And then maybe it's only the third pie that you can really have a combination of meat and traditional dough. And of course, some people may need substitutions for dairy, so not the regular cheese. So you may need a fourth pizza and maybe potentially the fifth, but I don't want to belabor the point. This is a pretty significant shift, and we should think not in terms of just raw quantities, such as I've got 10 customers, I got 100 customers, or I got 1,000,000 customers, and they all want on average some quantity of something, let's say 5 units of something, and so I'm delivering 50 or 500 or 5 million of these things to them, right? So it's not about quantities, it's about segments. You may have a team of 9 people and feed them with 3 pizzas. But you can have a team of just 3 people, and you still need 3 pizzas to feed them, because you've got 3 different segments to please. And that is a somewhat counterintuitive but very important shift from thinking in terms of production quantities, from, let's say, moving metal if you're in transportation, to understanding the variety of customer needs and how you can deliver products and services, your products and services, in a variety of ways to meet those needs and expectations. Folks, a number of famous people were mentioned in the book, and I just want to give you a few reflections on that. Well, first of all, kind of a humbling reflection. There was you can imagine a book author's horror when it's pretty late in the process, and we are almost next to the publication deadline, and I have to proofread the index, and I read it carefully. It's a late hour in the evening, and I notice on the letter J there is this entry: Johnston, Boris, page 9. So it turns out there was an unfortunate typo in the very first chapter of the book that takes place in the London taxi cab, and the taxi driver is speaking about the leader of his country at the time and having some choice words for him. And then that typo it goes unnoticed with all the revisions, and then ends up in the index, and that's how we caught it. There was maybe a couple of more famous people I want to talk about, because there's a lesson in there somewhere. So one of them is Justin Bieber, who is mentioned in the second chapter of the book, and he's mentioned one particular experience when something went wrong for him. So, just to be clear, my kids don't like Justin Bieber, but he is an absolutely bona fide superstar with over 100 million of loyal fans. He's a huge following on all social media. He sells out concerts. He sold a lot of records. His design as if you think of him as a product, right? So it's presented to the public. His design as a talented, young, confident singer is absolutely fit for purpose. His recorded music, his musical education, and he grew up in actually not very far from here, about 2 hours drive west. In Stratford. It's a town that knows how to nurture performing talent. By the way, anyone listening from Stratford, type some comments in the chat, perhaps ask a question, give me a shout. So, the implementation of Justin Bieber as a product before the audience is absolutely fit for purpose. So what went wrong in his concert in Mumbai at, I think it was in 2016 or 2017. Well, what happened was the management of delivery of of his performances, he was overbooked ridiculously on that tour. So I was kind of following him on Twitter, and he posted about his travels, and it just looked absolutely crazy. He had a concert in Dubai, and right after the concert, he's on a long-haul flight to South Africa, Durban. There's another concert, and then right after that concert, he's on another long flight to Mumbai, and that's where things went wrong. And I can only imagine how tired he must have been at the time. Now, I have some idea because I experienced something similar. There was a time when I scheduled my travels to various client sites where I conducted some training or consultations or events like conferences without sufficient care. And I ended up on one of those occasions with a very difficult week-long advanced workshop to teach. And I arrived pretty late on a Sunday. And that didn't go very well. And I could have done something different with my scheduling during the previous week that would have given me enough lead time for travel, and I could have arrived a day earlier. But, I kind of overextended myself. Ended up with too much commuting in the previous week, end-to-end days, and I ended up departing late on a later flight. The flight was also late by 3 hours, and by the time I got to my destination, it was supposed to be early in the morning, but it wasn't. After a connecting flight also. I checked in the hotel, finished lunch, and it was already getting dark. And I decided not to repeat such experiences, so that was my very own Justin Bieber moment. I decided not to repeat such experiences, and I made a rule that if I have something important planned for the following week, then I should avoid traveling on Sundays and instead arrive on a Saturday at my destination, settle in, and then begin my preparations and be in good shape on a Monday. Now, what transpired after the publication of the book was that we heard Justin Bieber was having some health issues, some burn down, and of course, we wish him the best. We wish him to be healthy and basically fulfill whatever his mission in life might be based on his talents. Another famous person mentioned in the book, and so I think this would be a useful reflection at the time, is Elon Musk. We wrote the book at the time when Tesla was in a kind of a difficult spot, and in a different condition than the company is today. So the difficult situation was that the kind of the more affordable Model S was actually experiencing quite a backlog of orders and subsequently quite long lead times to actually deliver vehicles. So a lot of loyal Tesla customers put deposits on the car, but Tesla still had to build the factory and fine-tune the production process. So it's not like the cars were rolling off the factory just yet. And so, like basically, if you take the length of the backlog divided by the current production rate, I mean, you're looking at years of lead time before you get your car. And this was clearly not satisfactory to a number of customers. Some customers canceled orders, other customers decided not to place orders. I know personally one of such potential customers who looked at the size of this backlog and decided, well, so this person was actually at a senior age, so she was possibly looking for the last car to buy, and this is an enthusiast of electric cars, wanted her car definitely to be electric, but didn't want to sacrifice 2 years of driving. So she ended up buying an electric car made by one of the traditional manufacturers. And so this is something that we wrote in the book, that this is kind of a trick that Tesla can get away with, but not necessarily your business, because Tesla has an enormously powerful brand, and Elon Musk has an enormously powerful personal brand as an entrepreneur. He's an extraordinarily capable business person. And so he can take a risk like this and kind of turn it around. But if you risk your own company and your own brand like this, but you don't have the same brand strength, things may not turn out so well for you. And if anything, like the way we wrote this story in the book back in 2017 was that if you look at Elon Musk's prior record in business, betting against Tesla, even in that sort of difficult spot that they were in at the time of writing, would be unwise. And of course, the way the events actually turned out validated our position. Tesla, of course, solved all of those production issues. The production volume increased quite a bit. They worked off the backlog, and now you can actually buy their cars without that much lead time. You can pretty much buy them as regular cars. However, in the meantime, what I'm now hearing from some potential electric car buyers, they actually don't want to buy Teslas at all, and that has nothing to do with, let's say, production situation. It has something to do with Elon Musk's involvement in politics recently, and some customers don't like it, and so they just look for some other brand of electric cars when they're on the market. And that's kind of as an illustration that sometimes the conformance criterion, conformance is one of the categories of fit for purpose criteria we identified in the book. Sometimes social conformance is part of that as well. Conformance criteria are often government regulatory, but in this case there is some social pressure. So a certain segment of society wants businesses to conform to certain norms in order for them to choose their products. But businesses can choose to care, or as in Elon Musk's case, not to care, and instead find loyal customers somewhere else. Folks, I wanted to kind of also give you somewhat of a tour behind the scenes. And I'm still hoping I can actually get, yes, I think it's gonna work now. So just waiting out a timeout, and Miro is now working. It's just I just had to wait about half an hour. So I wanted to show you something about the environment and give you the feel for the place where much of the creative energy was released by me and by David, where we wrote the book. And so okay, I'm here. So it kind of looks like this. So this is, much of the work actually took place next to the Strait of Juan de Fuca. This is the body of water that separates American lands in the Pacific Northwest and Canadian Vancouver Island. So this is kind of what it looks like. Very tall, dramatic mountains and cliffs made of packed sand. You have to be quite careful at the cliff edge. And I took some interesting wildlife photos during breaks when we had some nature walks around the area. And this is a picture from the ferry that how I approached the port town of Port Angeles, where David was waiting for me at the port. This is the main Port Angeles pier, and I think I posted this picture on Instagram with at the time I was actually quite active keeping kind of a diary of travels and photos at the time, and saying that I associate Port Angeles with discovery and professional achievement, and I'm here again. So that's what was on my mind as I approached this pier. Now, inside this building that looks like could have been a warehouse in the past, there is now a bunch of restaurants. Actually, this pier is being renovated, so maybe they changed it quite a bit by now. However, one of the restaurants inside this building was this wine bar, which is a very interesting place. And it was in this bar that David spotted the product. It's on the table in the bottom right corner. Here it is. This is Storm King Red, which became one of the emblems of the F4P movement. Storm King Red is inexpensive wine in a bag, but an ingenious design, an exacting and expensive implementation, and yet the distribution process and the service delivery component that makes sure that this product meets with just the right kind of customer and actually avoids all the naysayers who would say, what in the world is this? And that's a perfect solution created by a local business person. So a very fit for purpose product, and clearly one of the emblems of F4P, and that's why I chose it for the banner image. Some further work on fit for purpose was done across the strait on the Canadian side in Victoria. This is kind of what it looks like. This is the very first version of this picture. Looks kind of like a turkey. This is what David and I drew as a kind of infographic, kind of combining all the features of F4P framework in one picture. So this is kind of what the city of Victoria looked at the time. It's a pretty place, and I took some wildlife photos there as well. So I want to say something about like what some of the people who took F4P training classes, people that I've talked about fit for purpose as part of consultations and various meetings. What are some of the most important bits of advice that perhaps they didn't grasp immediately by reading the book or by, let's say, taking a training class? And now I can perhaps just put it more clearly. So one of them is around the concept of KPIs, folks. And as a leader of the business, this is some choice you're going to have to make. David and I made very clear choice when we wrote the book, and that was to use the word KPI as a fitness criterion by which your customers who are external to the company actually choose your, or perhaps your competitors' products and services. So if this is the criteria that clearly matters in this selection, then we want to call it the KPI. If this is some other kind of useful metric, we want not to call it the KPI. So we kind of drew the line right there. in the book and in the fit-for-purpose framework as well. So other useful types of metrics may be improvement drivers, health indicators, vanity metrics, also sometimes useful for a limited purpose. But we refrain from calling them KPIs. And yet in the typical like corporate jargon, the word KPI may be used to name any number of things. So how you achieve clarity and how you like lead your corporate culture and what meaning you attach to what words is going to be up to you as the leader of your business. But let's just illustrate it with a very simple example. So let's say Jenny is a new VP of marketing, and her number one concern for this year is churn. So the churn must be reduced so the company retains its customer base and potentially grows it, and that would boost the revenue and the bottom line. Jenny is very professional, she knows what to do, and she will run some promotions, campaigns, loyalty programs and whatnot to reduce customer churn. And as far as Jenny's boss is concerned, churn is Jenny's KPI. It's a key indicator of her performance. But if you ask customer, does the customer care? Does the customer even know what churn is? So let's say I call my bank and ask them, hey, what's your churn numbers looking like for November? And they say like, well, we lost 100,000 account holders. I say, oh, that's too much. I think I want to become the number 100,001 and close the account today. Well, the thing is, as a customer, I don't have a foggy idea even how many account holders my bank has to begin with. Is it 3 million or 10 million? Is 50,000 churn too much? Or it's okay, but 100,000, that's too much? Where's the line? The thing is, I don't know and I don't really care. This is not, as far as the customer is concerned, this is not a key indicator of my bank's performance, right? However, and if you're in Toronto, you know who I'm talking about. If your bank had a scheduled maintenance, or your competitors have a scheduled maintenance, and it turned into an outage that took 4 days to repair, as a customer, I will notice that. And that might be my decision to move my account somewhere else, and that will become churn, which is exactly the metric that Jenny is responsible for. So in this simple example, David and I, and the fit-for-purpose framework, chooses to apply the term KPI to something that's visible to customers, such as, let's say, how often do your systems have outages? How long does it take to repair an outage on average or at the maximum? And where is that threshold beyond which the customer will see the product or service as unfit and choose and switch to a competitor? Whereas some of the numbers that make sense only internally within the company, such as, let's say, subscriber acquisition or churn or revenue or profit per customer or some other metric that's perhaps quite useful, we like to call them health indicators and not KPIs. There's one important reason for this. Every time people hear the word KPI, they will interpret it as it's a key indicator of my performance. And then they will do whatever to run up that number, to make sure that it reaches some kind of stretch goal. And if that means sub-optimizing performance of the company as a business, perhaps if it means ignoring some of the problems that need to be fixed, and it may be more important to actually shore up reliability of IT systems at this bank than to run yet another loyalty program, So the results may be quite poor for the company as a whole, even though they're good for one particular individual. So, however, if we apply the term KPI to something that customers care about, something they use as a criteria for their choices, then okay, well, let's game those KPIs. Go ahead, folks. Well, what that's going to mean is just more customer satisfaction, more customer loyalty, more repeat customers, more new customers, fewer lost customers, better business. So that's about KPIs. Another thing I heard from a number of people I engaged with on the subject of F4P is that there is a lot of examples in our book that are quite relatable, because there are, let's say, about very common services such as air travel or pizza, and those industries, of course, give very understandable, compact examples of fit for purpose. But sometimes people had difficulty translating those into what is happening in their let's say, high-tech enterprise, where things are like not as visible and are, or so people like to think, quite a bit more complicated. And so specifically for these types of people, how, like, again, one software executive put it to me like, how do we translate, let's say, your example of pizza and its delivery time and its non-functional quality into what we do here in my company, right? So, folks, in a nutshell, I'm gonna keep this advice concise. So, first of all, going back to that, like, how big is your 3-pizza team? Speaking of your customer base, think not just in quantities, but in segments. And in each segment, you need to figure out some level of quality that you need to attain based on your strategy. In some segments, you need an absolutely top-notch quality in order to compete. In other segments, it may be just kind of average and adequate to prevent churn. Different segments of the market may play a different role in your strategy, and so you need to know where's the minimal and over-serving levels in each of those segments. So for as far as levels of quality, you have to choose that. Time is an absolutely almost universal fitness criteria. What you deliver to your customers and markets, your customer's purpose is not forever. They need it within a certain time window, and you need to hit that time window with kind of the tail end of your delivery time. So if you are producing some products or upgrades of those products or features, the cycles of time should be quite short to give your business enough flexibility to kind of fit within seasonal or natural business cycles of your industry. If you have a lot of regulatory requirements, those usually come with fixed dates attached, so the criterion is different. It's not just how quickly you do it. You don't have to be very fast, but you have to be fairly predictable, and kind of the end time must fit within the deadline in a high percentage of cases. If you have any external services in your business, let's say you depend on a vendor, now you are acting as a customer. Having a very transparent SLA understood from both sides, something that fits your purpose, and something that potentially derives from your customer's purpose. In the earlier episodes of the show, I spoke of a situation when a company had a few months lead time from their own customers, but they had a vendor, and so they had to insist on a certain SLA with that vendor in order to be fit for their customer's purpose. And folks, if you may do some kind of project work, or let's say you have significant project launches that comprise multiple features, that's pretty significant breakdown of work, those little things, the thin slices of value, those should be flowing quite fast. So if you're aiming for, let's say, your next minimally viable product launch in a couple of months, and that launch comprises a bunch of little features, then each of those features should have a lead time on the order of days, right? In order for you to actually steer that project towards successful completion with sufficient feedback. So pretty much for a lot of work processes within your company, you can derive a pretty good idea of a time fitness criteria. And everywhere where time is a fitness criterion, the work in process, inventory, things you already promised and not yet delivered, started, not finished, depending on how you want to count it, it's a leading health indicator, and that inventory is rising, then that just signals you will soon fail to meet those time commitments. And I also wanted to, let's go back to Miro, and I want to show kind of a very simple sketch of a kind of a diagram that shows some of the implications on the capabilities of your organization. This is going to be the first time I run over the 55-minute limit, possibly. All right. Anyway, so your product or service must conform to certain fitness criteria that your customers have in mind. And let's say one of them is your functional quality. Okay, well, where is this functional qualities happening? So what I just drew on this little whiteboard, that's kind of the finish line of your process. This is the stuff already delivered to your customers. What happens before? Okay, well, over here, there is what we call a commitment point. It's a point of selection where you actually choose what to build. So if you are a leader of a business and you have let's say functional quality as an important fitness criteria, your customers care whether your product has such and such function, then you should be observing your managers at the following exercise quite often. They get together, your product managers, maybe your engineering directors, your delivery managers, and they basically triage available options and proposals, and they choose what to build next, what the company should be busy building next, as opposed to deferring it until a bit later. So your functional quality basically depends on what happens with regularity at this line in the process. And if you can visualize it, you can perhaps observe that kind of invisible activity. Going next, as I said, time in process is going to be important, and so you need to manage flow between this starting point and your finish line. So whatever happens here, being mindful of how long it takes and making sure that the work continues to flow from start to finish. And being proactive about various delays that can happen. Also, being mindful of just how much work is in this span of the process, because that's a health indicator, as I said, is very important as well. And someone should be on top of that in your organization in order for it to meet your vision and deliver on your strategy successfully. Now, if you are in a regulated business, you're going to have some number of requirements that are fixed date. And so I just visualize them with a different color of a card on a visual board. And usually there is an earlier starting point in this process when the work is committed to start, it's committed to doing but it's not necessarily committed to start. And the commitment to doing is pretty much automatic. If you choose to be in this business, for example, insurance, then you are automatically obligated to fulfill a whole bunch of regulatory requirements, whatever those might be. So if a government writes a new regulation, well, basically you are automatically committed to doing some work that puts your company in compliance with that regulation. So commitment to doing is pretty much automatic. However, the commitment to start doesn't have to be. And let's say if a government gives you a year and a half to implement this new compliant functionality, but let's say you can do it with a lead time of, let's say, 2 to 4 months. Well, you have plenty of flexibility or agility, if you will, to schedule this important work and kind of fit it within the timeline. So knowing your delivery capability downstream from start to delivery allows optimal timing and the optimal mix of regulatory work and some of the, let's say, value-adding work that you envisioned yourself. Paying attention to the total inventory of such regulatory requirements is important. If this inventory is growing, that's a sign of trouble because you might not be able to satisfy the time criterion in the future. So satisfying time criterion goes hand in hand with how much inventory of the corresponding commitments you have, and you have to keep an eye on it. And the hard part, the non-functional quality of your products and service, and that often depends on contributions of narrow specialists. So I kind of borrowed kind of the diagramming language from the previous presentation, where it's kind of sort of a group of collaborating colleagues, potentially from very different departments of the company, some of them working full-time on this project, some of them needing, well, their expertise is only needed occasionally. So if your customers require high levels of non-functional quality, that will often come from contributions of narrow specialists, and that results in probabilistic delays in your process and how you manage those dependencies. And probabilistic delays is an important capability that you need to have in your company on the operations side, as far as fulfilling your strategy that relies on hitting those high notes as far as the non-functional quality of your products. So, folks, I just ran over time. It's 58 minutes. I'm sorry about this. This may be the first time I failed to stick to the 55-minute rule. So, without much further delay, I could keep this going. There's, of course, lots to talk about fit for purpose, but hopefully you've got some takeaways as far as how fit for purpose translates into certain decisions or approaches in your technological enterprise. Maybe you got some kind of shift in thinking from quantities you deliver to your customers to segments and varieties of needs, and maybe just some fun reading random fragments of the book and just recalling the old times and the environment in which this book was written. Thank you very much for watching or listening. See you next week. Please stay tuned for some social media updates. I have picked the topic for the next week's episode and will be announcing it probably tomorrow. And a little bit later today, I will be also updating the description of this video, annotating it with timestamps so that you can watch it perhaps with more convenience by jumping directly to the timestamp that interests you. Thank you all very much, and goodbye.